You like QRP, huh? Yeah, I'd say your signal right now is about 5 by 3. No, I mean over the phone. Hello, electronics enthusiasts and ham radio operators all over the world. I'm Dave Casler, amateur radio call sign KE0OG, here with another episode of Ask Dave. Some time ago, with channel funds, I purchased the latest QRP radio made by Ashar Farhan in India, and you can find his website at hfsignals.com. He's come out with a new one called the zBitx, and I got one and I've been playing with it. I got it with channel funds. What I didn't know that Ashar told me recently was that he was at Dayton and he was looking for me, so he didn't find me. But in any event, I got hold of the radio. I did an earlier video about it where we looked at some of the basic functions and so on. This is a little more in-depth test of what it can do, and it's actually pretty remarkable. So let's take a look at some pictures. This is what the BITX looks like. It has a 3D printed case and a place for two batteries here, two lithium batteries. And the way you turn it on is to plug this right into the input right there. Let's talk a little bit about price. You get it from hfsignals.com, which is in India. And this is the price as of today. $169 for the radio with the Raspberry Pi. There's actually two Raspberry Pis in here. Software installed, tested, $20 shipping charge. He says 7 days shipping, although it took a little longer for mine. And there's another spot on his website that says wait 4 weeks from time of order to get it. The $8 PayPal charge, the 5%, actually I think is probably a little bit lower than what PayPal charges me. So total is actually slightly under $200. Okay, now everybody hears about tariffs. President Trump has just placed a very punitive tariff on India because it's buying Russian oil. So I looked that up to see what might be exempt from the tariff. The de minimis exemption no longer exists, so you can't get cheap things without the tariff. But here are the exempt products. And the important one is this one, communications equipment, including smartphones. Most decidedly, this is a piece of communications equipment. Now, as I mentioned here, you have to put the batteries in. But if you look at this little thing here that talks about different sizes of batteries, you can get them with the button on the positive side, and you can get them flat on both sides, and you need to get the flat one to go in there. It just will not do it with the button. Ashar sent me a photograph of his with the button. I don't know how he did that because mine definitely would not even come close to fitting ones that I had with the button on it, so I had to buy some new ones, which are readily available on Amazon. But you're looking for this particular battery and without the button. Now, the other thing is that the power supply has to be between 6 and 9 volts. Now, good luck finding that in your ham shack, unless you've got an adjustable power supply or something. Most adjustable power supplies just adjust a little bit either side of 13.8 volts. But this is what I got. It's $10. It's a DC to DC converter. Take from 12 to 24 volts input and give you 9 volts output. And it's available for $10. You can find this on Amazon. This is what the top of the case looks like. 6 to 9 volts goes in here. This is the front on this side. This is the cat. For cat control, you put in a cable to that, and it happens to be a USB 2 mini cable. And then right here, it's not quite in line with it. This one is not used, but this one is. This is your USB for hooking up a monitor, a keyboard and a mouse, and so on. Then, of course, you have your earphone, microphone, and key. Now, it can be taken apart. At first, I just turned these little things on the front, which takes a hex wrench that you can put in, and you can open these up. But in order to do so, you will need to use a tool to hold these in place. Otherwise, you'll just spin to your heart's content, and this will spin with it. And there's one on every corner. Don't undo the ones that are in the middle. Now, this is a 3D printed case in 5 parts. So you have up here the top part, which is this part right here. This is where the speaker is. There's only a single knob. You have to do everything with the single knob. And then you have these ports on the top, and then the other sides are plain, and you see a seam right here. They all fit together like a puzzle. So take it apart slowly and remember how it goes back together. Now, in order to work with these parts, he wants you to plug in a regular monitor, an HDMI monitor. This is a HDMI mini. Now, as it turned out, I had the cable that would go between this and a monitor. USB, he wants a USB keyboard and mouse all out of one port, not to use this port. So I had to get an adapter and put that in there. This actually goes to a different Raspberry Pi. Okay, that's kind of odd, you would think, but it's a different Raspberry Pi. But it's the same kind of port. Now, you can get adapters for these on Amazon. I don't know of any USB keyboards that have anything other than a full-sized USB-A on the end of the keyboard. So I got one of these and coupled it with a little Bluetooth thing that would work both with the keyboard and a mouse, and that worked just fine. So you can get these just $5 on Amazon. Okay, it's a shame that you have to get so many extra things to make the radio work. But now this is the bottom is a rather thick aluminum plate, and here's your serial number with a piece of tape over it so it doesn't wipe off. This is mine. I tested 2507-1081. Now, when you take it apart, you'll find that there are two boards in there pretty close together. Of course, I had to take them apart, which I did. They plug into each other, so that's not a problem. This is the back of the back board, and so this is right up against that aluminum back case. This is a Raspberry Pi right here, okay? This is the regular Raspberry Pi. You can see right here the port for the HDMI and your little plug-in ports for audio devices and so on, which he uses for key, earphone, and microphone. And right here are the USB ports. So all of this, look at all the coils. This is all pre-built. There's nothing you need to do to make this work, okay? A close-up of the Raspberry Pi turned the right side up. It's a Raspberry Pi 0, and then a 2W, and I'm not sure if that's 2 watts, 2024, so it's not a real old one. It mentions that it has HDMI on it. There's lots of things, of course, you know, that you can do with a Raspberry Pi. Now, what is interesting about this Raspberry Pi, if we take a look at it, is that with an infrared camera, that flat back piece of aluminum actually gets quite warm over here where that Raspberry Pi is. So your antenna port is out over on this side. You get the heat from the Raspberry Pi and from other things that are in there. All right, and this can be quite warm. I remember after my first sideband QSO with the thing, it was almost hot to pick up. Now, here is the other Raspberry Pi that slips in. If you look at it from the top, it's got right here, it's the one that gives you this connection right here. This is on the other board, and they're kind of laid next to each other a little bit. All right. Now, here's the screen. This right here is your one knob. Now, it's interesting. This has a push button feature on it that is not used for anything that I can tell. This is just used as a rotator, a shaft encoder. Okay. And this is the screen right there. Now, if you look at it from the front with the IR camera, you see 104.7 right there. This thing does get warm up on top. And 92 right there. So it does get warm. This is the knob. This is the antenna output. These are the batteries. Here is the battery cable going in over there. All right. So let's take a look at some testing results. Power output test. It claims 5 watts. And this is what I used. The 9.1 volt input. This is that 12 volt lithium ion with the DC to DC converter to 9 volts. a 50 ohm dummy load, which is a Heathkit antenna. The test watt meter is the CQV-SWR120, which is a little thing that'll give you a bunch of digital readouts of your signal, and it'll go up to 120 watts, so you can use this for your normal radio. So the 80 meter CW is 10.6 watts out, key down, 40 meters 8.3, 30 meters 9 watts out, 20 and 17 both 10 watts out, 15 6 watts, 12 5.2, and on 10 it cuts down to 3.7. I did have a couple QSOs with it, one with Ken in Indiana at the state fair there, running a special event station. He gave me a 5x5. I used my hex beam, and Pete in Louisiana, 5.9 with my antenna, a hex beam. And they worked. They had no complaints on the other end. Ken did have to ask for a couple of repeats from me, but with Pete, no problem. Now, if you attach that monitor and the keyboard and the mouse, you get this screen right here. This is the Raspberry Pi's main screen. This background here are 4 tubes aligned here, 4 miniature tubes, which would glow at the top and the bottom because the guts is right here and hides the glowing. And then it repeats for you pretty much the screen that you have on the front, and you can click on these if you want to operate it that way. Now, I tried very hard to use this device, not with this right here, because this is for Linux for controlling the device. Oh, by the way, this is the only way you can set up the wireless inside the device. It has wireless capability. You can't do that from the front panel. To kind of summarize here, this is what's good. It's remarkably inexpensive for what's included. $200 for an all-band, all-mode with the built-in batteries. Now you've got to add cost to the batteries themselves or the cost of that little adapter. It's barely over 1 pound. It's 1 pound plus 3/10 of an ounce with the batteries. It has built-in FT8 and a built-in logging capability. Now, I was not able to make the part where you can attach a cable to it and then to your computer and do the WSJTF. And the built-in log does put out the file that can be simply imported to your log, but you need to go back to this to find the file and then export that file to something that you can read. I'm a PC guy, so I do have some grumbles about it. I have to turn the volume up quite a ways, 90 to 95%, to hear any signal out over the speaker. If you just plug it in at a normal 50% or something like that, you don't hear anything coming out. The other grumble is the 6 to 9 volt input. This requires you either use the batteries or an adapter, which is the little DC to DC converter I showed earlier. That way you can use your shack 12 volts, which is actually closer to 13.8. That will give you a power supply, or you can purchase the no bump lithium ion batteries, or no button, or both like I did. I got the converter and I got the no button lithium ion batteries. Now, Ashar did send me a photograph of his batteries going into the case, and they fit. I could not get mine in for anything. I suppose I could have taken a hammer to it, but that didn't seem wise. It does get quite warm to use. Ventilation slots could help, I think. There's no on-off switch. You have to plug in the power, it comes on, otherwise you take the thing out. It is really easy to have the thing running on batteries and then walk away from it, and you come back to dead batteries. Note, the existing knob does have a feature that you can press it. Maybe this feature could be used. That's what the QMX from QRP Labs uses, is one of the button pushes on a knob. He says it just takes some getting used to the stylus. I think it would take a lot of use to get to the stylus, because I'm just used to grabbing the knob. And like, for example, if I have it set for volume, then it adjusts the volume when I'm hoping to get it to change frequency. If you have it setting to change the frequency and you hit it to get more volume, you're going to go way off your frequency. And so far, I've had no luck on using WSJTX digital mode or any of the digital modes with my existing PC. I really tried. Now, it does need the adapter to use with the USB keyboard and mouse, but with the adapter I showed you, you can do that just fine. On August 20th, I received a very nice email from Farhan. He was very polite, took the time to go through the questions that I had raised in the first video, and I really appreciate that he did that. He says, I was pleasantly surprised to see your initial thoughts about the zBitx, and he wanted to bring me up on a few things there. He says it was really unintended. He had been working with the sBitx, which is a much larger unit. I don't have one of those. I didn't even know it was there, or I would have ordered it, but it's close to $400, so it's twice the price of this. It's 25-watt radio powered by Raspberry Pi 4, and he gives the links and so on. We'll put the links in the text below the video. Okay, it's an open source radio. He says that it is constantly being updated. Everything he's done is open source, which no other QRP manufacturer can really claim. He says 2 years ago he was impressed with the KH1 radio from Videographed, but I thought it was too expensive to buy a $600 radio that only does CW. He says, I thought I could homebrew a mini version of the sBitx so it would fit in my laptop bag with a little Raspberry Pi Zero. He said he had no intention of commercializing it. However, he presented it at the 2024 Dayton. There's a parallel conference called 4 Days in May that's Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And he did a presentation there, and that's available at one of the links that's in the text below. It's a 40-minute video because it's a full presentation that he gave right there. He says the presentation is online. He has also started using his zBitx for his hikes. The zBitx uses the same software as the sBitx with a little code added to handle the unusual 3.5-inch display. He talks about this. He says there was a huge interest in this, that by December, so this is 6 months after Dayton, he decided to do a run of a, quote, few hundred PCBs. When I sat down to lay it out, I realized that given it is a software-defined radio, he could add a larger screen so other modes could be run as well. Said the response was overwhelming and it took 6 months to catch up with the backlog. Now, he wanted to talk about a few things. The micro USB. In other words, I said it didn't have a USB-C, and everything is going to USB-C these days. The Raspberry Pi version he used had a micro B cable end, which is just not available these days. So fortunately on Amazon, I was able to buy some adapters. But he says the Raspberry Pis he got and used come with those ports. It was not a conscious decision on his part. But like I said, the adapters are available. As far as the lithium iron phosphate case, he uses his batteries with the bump. Now, I've got to wonder about that because I have a flashlight. This uses the battery with the bump. And I tried to get that thing in there. Tempted as I was to get a sledgehammer to force it in, it would not go in. So I did a little research and found that you can get those batteries without the button on the top, and those fit perfectly. He says getting good screens at low cost is very difficult if you're doing a small run. He says most of the screens that are out there are locked up with contracts between the display manufacturer and the OEM manufacturer that is using that board in their product. So that was the screen that he got. The current screen's text is actually bigger than what you normally read on an iPhone, which is really small for me, but that's okay. I can read it. The stylus, capacitive touch displays, like on the iPhone, won't work if you're wearing gloves or things like that. So he got the kind, being a field radio, we had to resort to resistive touch, where you can press the screen with anything that is handy. He says, or you can use the tip of a pencil or pen or the eraser on a pencil and get to these things. I really would like to have seen at least 2 knobs. So you'd have one for volume, one for frequency, and then with a push or touch of something, it can become something else and then go back to being the volume and the frequency. And that's how the QMX does it. Home ops, he says, it's nice if you can plug that into an HDMI monitor with a keyboard and a mouse. And that's why he said he included the particular USB cable that he has for that, which is nice to include that. Now, he ships DHL. That's fine in all the world except the United States. DHL tried to make an entry into the United States. They built a great big facility in Indiana, I think it was, for package sorting and everything, just like FedEx has a big one in the middle of the country. And they hired a whole bunch of people, but the problem is that the shipping market for packages in the United States is so mature that there are 3 suppliers: the United States Postal Service, UPS, and FedEx. Okay? And most of the companies that purchase shipping already have a contract with one of the shippers. I only ship USPS, for example, because I can just go into PayPal, set it up right there. It'll print the shipping label, slap it on, and out it goes. I tried looking at UPS because they're occasionally cheaper, but then I had to pay a monthly fee or something like that, so forget that. And of course, FedEx is the most expensive of the bunch. The problem that they had with DHL is that companies are already tied in with the shipper. And so DHL, I mean, that's the vast majority of shipping, is not from homes to homes. It's from great big warehouses to the consumer, okay? And DHL, everybody had a contract already. So what they backed off on doing, they had to let a lot of people go, who were there to sort the packages. They do ship into the United States. And then they have a fleet of trucks that will deliver their little packages, including way out here to where I am. And sometimes I know UPS will deliver the last mile by handing the box to the post office, and which has created a lot of trouble for me. It's too bad about DHL, but they just got into the U.S. 20 years too late. Okay, everybody's already locked up with contracts. Now, the total cost, he mentions the price does not include shipping. That's normal. It also includes a fee for the use of PayPal, which is not normal. It allows him to advertise it for a lower cost. People outside the country are going to use PayPal to do it. And if you send somebody PayPal, $5 worth of PayPal, the recipient has to pay a fee to PayPal and then takes their $4.75 or whatever it might be. So he's asking that we pay the 5% PayPal fee, which would be $10. Okay, and I kind of sympathize with him on that, because back when I used to sell CDs with the Tech General and Extra licensing videos, I had to pay all of those fees. I kind of built it into the price, but he's doing it a little different, and that's fine. He's totally open about it. There's no power switch. Yeah, that was a bad mistake on his. He should have included it. He said the board had no space left. And I, again, recommend this little button right here pushes down and clicks. That could be on, off, like it is on the QCX, which would save the problem, but it would create a little bit of a software problem. The odd operating voltage, he says, everybody else is moving to the 2 lithium batteries that together make 7.2 volts. I know all the Chinese radios are like that. That's what their power pack is. However, they have a built-in charger that will charge them by plugging it into the wall, or you can get the kind of with the molded plug that you can put into your power takeoff in your truck or car. But the fact is, ham Radio Shacks, I think around the world, run on 12 volts, nominal 12 volts, actually 13.8 volts. Or if I'm charging my lithium ion battery, the lithium ion battery gives me 13.4 volts at night and up to 14.6 volts during the day when it's being charged. So that's a bunch of stuff, okay? Now, I'm seeing more and more and more stuff go to 5 volts. Now, it's interesting because the most recent radio that I got from China is one where you plug in 5 volts and they give you the little adapter for it, and it actually boosts it up to 7.2, actually more than that, it's 14.6, 7.3 or something like that, to charge those batteries in there. So it's going the other direction. So I'm seeing 12, really 13.8, or 5. Now, the QMX, you can wire it for either 12 volts or 9 volts. I wired mine for 9. And you can use 12, but it has to actually be 12. And there's nobody who makes a power supply for amateur radio that is 12 volts on the dot. Now, your computer power supply does, but not your ham radio power supply. That's why I built it for 9 volts, so I could use that little buck converter to take it down to 9 volts. And I'm still working on that project. I got a couple bugs to work out. He also mentions that the power consumption, there is a linear regulator in there that does take quite a bit of power to operate. The other thing that he talked about was something that I thought was very interesting. He wants to move away from the paddle. He doesn't want you to have to take a key for this, because if you turn this to the CW mode, when you go into transmit, you get a little, like a typewriter keyboard right here, and you can just type out what you want and it'll send that out. Now again, you do that with the stylus, but even with the stylus, it could be faster than with the paddle. Now, they make paddles that are very light. I prefer the paddle itself. You can use that with it without any kind of a problem. And there are not paddles built into this, because he's thinking using the keyboard, a lot of people might find that easier. Now, there is a built-in CW decoder. However, you have to take a guess as to the number of words per minute to get the thing to lock in on the speed. I've seen much better CW decoders that work really, really well, and they don't need to be told what speed to start at. It takes them a little while to lock in on the speed. I think what we need are AI CW decoders that can take into account the odd ways that people send code. And believe me, I've heard everything on the air. So there you have it. That's a lot to talk about. If you want something, this is, like I said, 3/10 of an ounce over a pound to put into your backpack with the batteries already on it, and a complete station. You've got to take some sort of antenna, of course. It has a built-in microphone here. There you have it. Wow, what a lot. Now, don't forget, if you join Patreon, go to patreon.com/KE0OG. Sign up for the $2 or higher level. We will send you, by return mail, a real, genuine US $2 bill. This is legal currency. You can show it to all your friends because they're so rare. So, there you have it. Until we next meet, 73.